To do your watercolor project today, you need heavy paper, you need your watercolor paint with the lid to use as the palette, you need water, and you need your brushes. You can go ahead and you can draw these basic shapes onto your paper. They do not need to be exactly like mine, and they do not need to be labeled, but draw them lightly with a pencil so you can erase them later. Just as a reminder, watercolor needs water to work, and you need to treat your brushes really well. I sent home brushes with y'all that are yours to keep, but do not ruin them or you will not have nice brushes anymore. So when you're swishing them in the water, swish them around the water. Don't like stab it in. You can lightly brush off extra water, wipe it off on a paper towel. The first thing that we are going to practice doing is wet on dry. So we're going to get a little bit of water from our cup. I'm going to start with some blue. So I'm just mixing some blue in with the paint. Notice I'm being gentle with it. I don't need to smash it in there. I don't need to like scrub it all around. Just picking up some color. And then I'm going to put it down here. So wet paint or a wet brush on dry paper. First thing we will do. And then let's do wet on wet. So I'm going to clean off my brush, clean off all the paint, dry it on my paper towel just to make sure I don't have any pigment left. And then I'm going to fill up this space with water. So wet on wet. And we're going to see what that looks like. So the space is filled up with water, and now I'm going to pick up pigment from my palette. And then I can put it in here, and we can see how it like spreads around and moves around in the way that it looks different than the original one. Okay. And now for wet drops on wet paper, I'm going to rinse my brush, make sure I don't have any pigment left in it. And then again, I'm going to fill up the space. And then I'm going to pick up some of this blue and put some drops in there. You can watch how they spread around. And then if I'm going to put a different color in, then I'm going to go rinse my brush, wipe it off, wipe off any extra water. Maybe I'll pick up some green and then drop it in here. So we can see how those colors would blend together. You see how they kind of move around and mix. If I want to add a different color, rinse my brush, make sure it's clean. Maybe I'll pick up a little bit of this gold and drop that in. Okay, and we see that these colors blend together, they become really soft. All right, and so now let's do the gradient. So I'm going to have my gradient start off dark on this side and then move lighter as it moves across. We did this with pencil earlier this year. So I'm just practicing like letting the pigment lift off and fade because it does not work to take away pigment or to make the color lighter once I've already put it down. So I want it darkest on this side so I can get rid of any extra pigment on the paper towel. It gets lighter as it moves across. And just like everything else, it takes practice. So darker on this side, lighter as it moves across. And you notice that where there's a lot of water, the paint sort of moves to the edge. Okay, so now we know how to blend colors a little bit. So I want to move down here to this hard edge one because we're going to practice not blending the colors. So we're going to do some concentric circles. Let's start off with red. So I'm going to get red pigment on my brush, make a circle. But now, to make a concentric circle, a circle that goes around this one, I need to let that dry first. And this is going to be very important for basically anything that you're painting besides just like a color wash. So I need to let this dry before I do the next color. Which same thing for this section where we're not blending the colors. I'll put down pigment. And I'll leave a hard edge. Okay. But then if I'm going to blend these two colors together, for this one, I can put down water. I can do this wet on wet. I could do this wet on dry, dry on dry. If there's too much water, I can dab it up with a paper towel, but I have to be careful. Okay, so then if I'm going to blend, you can put red here. Rinse my brush. Make sure all that pigment's off before I put it back in my palette. Then pick up blue. And then let these colors blend in the middle. But if I didn't want those colors to blend, I would have to make sure that it was dry. So I'm going to rinse my brush. Make sure it's clean. And then I can pick up some blue. And this is dry enough now that I can not blend these red and this red and this blue together. And then I can do, for my hard edge, I can go on to the next circle because I think it's dry enough. And we could see how those don't blend. For the soft edge, clean off my brush, pick up some red. And we can still see it is a concentric circle, but they blend together. There's not that hard distinction between the two. All right, and then a dry brush technique. You're gonna dry off your brush, leave the paper dry, get some strong pigment on your brush without a ton of water. That's a good way to add texture, but it will not work if there's water already on your paper or too much water on the brush.